Welcome to a new episode of System Update. Tonight, for years now, Joe Biden and his White House have been advocating that the social media app TikTok be banned in the United States, arguing that the app is a tool of the Chinese government to spy on and propagandize American citizens, especially American youth. This push to ban TikTok originated with the U.S. security state agencies led by the CIA, the FBI, and the Pentagon, and now has the support of a majority of both political parties in Washington. This week, a bill unanimously passed a House committee that would require TikTok to separately divest from any Chinese ownership in a set period of time or face being banned. In other words, Apple and other platforms would be required to remove TikTok from their store, a measure the company and experts say would amount to a full-on ban, since it would be close to impossible to spin it off within the allotted period of time. When earlier today, when asked if he supports and would sign the bill if it passed Congress, Biden, consistent with his long-standing opposition to TikTok, unequivocally said that he would absolutely sign such a bill the minute it hits his desk. Meanwhile, the almost certain Republican nominee Donald Trump had a much different reaction. He warned of the dangers of this bill. On his Truth Social site, Trump warned that banning TikTok will, by design, drive millions of Americans into using Facebook and Google, especially Facebook, which he blames for having, quote, cheated in the last election. Now, we have frequently reviewed why the arguments in favor of banning TikTok by the United States government are largely fraudulent and deceitful. The last time we covered this issue was back in November, where we examined and deconstructed every claim made by Washington advocates for banning TikTok, many of which rely on fear-mongering about Chinese control and other claims that are simply not true. We won't repeat all of those arguments here. Suffice to say, tens of millions of Americans voluntarily choose to use that social media app as their primary means of political and social expression. It is the only major app among the big tech behemoths whose censorship demands and decisions are not fully captured by the United States government, meaning a ban on TikTok would result in tens of millions of Americans being forced onto social media platforms such as Google and Facebook, platforms which, as we know from ample reporting, the U.S. security state can and does coerce into censoring on their behalf. In many ways, China is to conservative politics what Russia is to liberal politics. An all-purpose foreign boogeyman that can be used to explain away everything in the United States, scapegoat everything onto it, and justify every new assertion of government power by invoking fear around it. We know that many of you in our audience think that when Biden signs into law a ban on TikTok, it will constitute some major blow against the interest of Beijing. But as we have tried to argue previously, whenever the U.S. government and Washington's ruling class unites and seeks to dictate which platforms American citizens can use and how they can use them and who must control them, ample amounts of skepticism at the very least are required in response. That is almost certainly true for this latest Biden-supported bipartisan bill, and we will review the key aspects of it tonight. One of the observations we have most frequently made about the Trump era is the way in which the Trump candidacy, the Trump presidency, the Trump effort now to return to the Oval Office has scrambled almost completely and in every sense what had been longstanding and quite predictable ideological categories. One of the examples that illustrates the way in which this is being scrambled is the two-year attempt by the Biden White House. It has emanated from the executive branch, from the CIA, the FBI, the Pentagon, and then into the Biden White House, an attempt to urge that the social media platform TikTok be banned in the United States, despite the fact, or really because of the fact, that it is so wildly popular among young American citizens. Tens of millions of American citizens create their social bonds, find expression politically and socially, obtain their news and their information, form their political ideas on that app. It's the place that they go to find community. They spend hours and hours and hours on it every day. It's almost certainly, among young people at least, the most influential social media platform in the country. And there's an attempt, obviously, when there's a social media platform that powerful, that influential, where so many young people are, obviously power centers want to reach them. They don't want to allow this platform to go uncontrolled and unmonitored and ungoverned. That's too dangerous. You can't allow young Americans to be consuming information without the US government influencing and shaping and dictating what it is that they consume. And that's the real reason why there's a move in Washington to ban TikTok. And of course, they can't admit that, so they need a pretext. And the pretext is that TikTok has a connection to Chinese people. And that then is used to claim that the Chinese Communist Party is the platform controlling TikTok, and that the Chinese Communist Party uses TikTok to spy on our precious young American youth as well as to propagandize them. Now, as I said before, we have covered in depth on at least 2 programs, which we will direct you to if you want to review the arguments, that this is a fear-mongering claim that has emanated from the U.S. security state, gone to the Biden administration, and then to the establishment wings of both political parties to commandeer a social media platform that they cannot yet control and that yet allows a lot of free flow of information, because they want to grab that and take it and be able to use it for their own ends. Just this week, there was a major advancement in the attempt to ban the social media platform that is incredibly popular among American citizens. Remember, no one forces any American to use it. Every American who uses it voluntarily. And when they post their ideas or their views to TikTok, it's because they choose to. And nobody tells them what they have to say. They express the views that they believe in. That's the nature of the app. Here from CNN, however, yesterday, House panel unanimously approves a bill that could ban TikTok. It's not a Republican initiative. It's not a Democratic initiative. It is now fully bipartisan. The effort to take an app that tens of millions of Americans are using, wrestle control away from its current owners, and in the highly likely event that it can't be done within the time period allotted, require that Apple and Google and other platforms kick them out of the store and do not allow further updates or further downloads. Exactly what was done to destroy Parler, the free speech platform in 2021 that became the most popular and most downloaded app in all of the United States, only for Democrats to pressure Apple and Google to remove it from its store, which they did, and then to pressure Amazon Web Services to stop hosting Parler, and it destroyed Parler overnight. That's the same playbook being used here. Quote, New Jersey Congressman Frank Pallone, its ranking Democrat, this committee's ranking Democrat, compared the bill to prior efforts to regulate the U.S. airwaves, citing testimony from national security officials from a closed-door hearing Thursday. Quote, I take the concerns raised by the intelligence community this morning very seriously. Now, let me just emphasize where these warnings are coming from. These are concerns raised by the intelligence community. The intelligence community means the CIA, the FBI, Homeland Security, and then here too, the way in which this bill emerged is a result of testimony from national security officials from a closed-door hearing on Thursday. Now, if I know anything about right-wing politics in the United States in the era of Trump, it is that almost everybody on the right, practically by definition, has expressed a serious concern about the way in which the national security state is trying to control the content and the flow of information over the internet. That's what the Twitter files were about. That's what all of the rage and anger was about when it came to censoring dissent on COVID and on the war in Ukraine in the 2020 election. That was what the court rulings were about that we reported on, first at a district court level and then an appellate court level, that found that the attempts by the Biden executive branch and various agencies within it, including the CIA and the FBI and the CDC, have been coercing and threatening big tech to remove content that they dislike, that they regard as false or dangerous. A program that the 4 judges in the federal system that have reviewed it have said is as profound an attack on the First Amendment guarantee of free speech as any in decades. How is it that anyone who has been thinking that, and anyone who has been saying that over the past 5 years or 7 years can now turn around and applaud when the CIA and the FBI in closed-door meetings convinces Congress to seize control of one of the most popular social media apps, and if they can't, to ban it from existing in the United States, to ban American citizens who want to use it from being able to use it? It's such an inherently extreme and extremist measure, and they're counting on the fact that a lot of people fear China the way liberals fear Russia, and all they have to do is invoke the scary specter of China for everyone to stand up and applaud the government and Joe Biden and the bipartisan Congress for seizing control of this app. This is what's really happening here. Now, just to continue and conclude the CNN article, quote, they have asked Congress, meaning the intelligence community has asked Congress to give them more authority to act in these narrowly defined situations, and I believe this bill will do that. Now, the last time there was a bill that was presented, when there was this kind of hysteria created over TikTok, when the CEO of TikTok testified back in early 2023, the bill that was presented that they told people was designed to allow Joe Biden and the government to ban TikTok if they wanted, in fact, vested far more powers in the government than just that. It allowed them to basically ban any social media app that has foreign ownership that they decree to be dangerous. Now, here is, I just want to, in light of that, highlight what he's saying here. He's saying they, namely the intelligence community, they have asked Congress to give them more authority to act in these narrowly defined situations, meaning when they perceive that a social media app is being threatening to their interest by allowing certain speech to flow, the CIA and the FBI and Homeland Security are demanding from Congress in closed-door hearings the power to stop that and control that. How can anybody be satisfied with that? Especially those of you who have been raising grievances about the attempt by the U.S. security state to control the flow of information over the internet. What is this if not that? Now, the way the bill is structured is designed to, again, create this perception that it's really about curbing Chinese control. It essentially requires that the parent company of TikTok, ByteDance, which is a China-based company, spin off TikTok within a very short amount of time, basically 6 months, and that if they don't, they will then be banned from the United States. Now, spinning off a company the size of TikTok is a massive undertaking. And this amount of time is almost certainly constructed in order to fail. And that is exactly what TikTok's response is to this bill. Here's what TikTok says, quote, our statement on today's committee vote, quote, this legislation has a predetermined outcome, a total ban of TikTok in the United States. The government is attempting to strip 170 million Americans of their constitutional right to free expression. This will damage millions of businesses, deny artists an audience, and destroy the livelihoods of countless creators across the country. Now, back in 2020, Donald Trump also got behind a threat to ban TikTok. But in response to that threat, he was able to extract concessions, including ensuring that TikTok has a primarily American management, which they now do. TikTok agreed to place control over the data it receives from American users inside the United States under the control of an American company. And it has increasingly turned over responsibility for so-called content moderation decisions to the United States security state. So a lot of these concerns were assuaged by putting under American control both control over the data and control over content moderation decisions. And in fact, what TikTok has been doing is hiring a slew of former content moderators from Facebook and Google, who, as we've reported many times before, have extensive ties to the U.S. security state, precisely because they want to prove to the United States that they are willing to play ball when it comes to censorship. The problem is that the control over TikTok is not as great by the United States government as it is control over Facebook and Google. They want Facebook and Google to remain these powerful behemoths in which all power is centralized, because that's what they can control more. Now, here is Joe Biden. He is going on some sort of victory lap after his State of the Union address, where he didn't fall down, where his teeth didn't fall out, where he didn't start having saliva come out of his mouth. And he is getting ready to leave for Philadelphia to go to a campaign event. And he was asked about this issue with TikTok, and here's what he said. Let's see if we can play this video.
I
just saw a little bit on television.
I thought she's a very talented woman. I didn't quite understand the connection she was making.
This question, do you still support banning TikTok? Would you sign that bill?
So the question was, do you still support banning TikTok? Will you sign this bill? And here was Biden's answer.
If they pass it, I'll sign it.
Mr. President, who is going to provide...
All right, so there you have it. And that's not a surprise. Joe Biden has been supporting a ban of TikTok for a long time now. Now, do we have Trump's reply here? Okay, we just have it in a Rand Paul tweet. But earlier today on his Truth Social media platform, Donald Trump also addressed this bill. And he had a much different response than Joe Biden. Donald Trump said the following: if you get rid of TikTok, Facebook, and Zuckerschmuck, it will double their business. I don't want Facebook, who cheated in the last election, doing better. They are a true enemy of the people. And then Rand Paul put that into his own language, and he said the following. This is Senator Rand Paul, the Republican from Kentucky. Quote, if Congress bans TikTok, they will be acting just like the Chinese communists who have also banned TikTok. Why not just defend the First Amendment? So ordinarily, right-wing media loves to convince its audience that Joe Biden is weak on national security, he's weak on Russia, he's weak on Israel, he's weak on China, and yet here you have Joe Biden with a very aggressive foreign policy of fueling a war against Russia, of paying for and supporting Israel's war in Gaza, of bombing Yemen continuously without congressional approval, of bombing sites that he claims are backed by Iranian militias in Iraq and Syria. He has militarily encircled China by putting military bases all around them in almost every direction. And now here is Joe Biden saying that he supports a ban of TikTok on the grounds that it's controlled by the Chinese, while Donald Trump saying the only thing this will do is drive more and more people into Facebook. And if you're a conservative, why would you want to do that, given how much you know about the government's ability to control the flow of information on Facebook and their ability to censor Facebook? Now, another Republican congressman, Thomas Massie, who is one of the more independent-minded and freedom-oriented people in the Congress, said this, quote, next week the House will vote to give Biden the power to decide which apps you can run on your phone based on whether he deems them to be owned by a foreign adversary. I've never used TikTok, but I'm not voting to give the president new powers to ban it and other apps. How is that not the view of every single conservative and every single person who's not a conservative who has expressed serious concerns about the ability and the desire and the success of the American U.S. security state to control the flow of information on the internet? Here is Congresswoman Kathy McMorris, a Democrat from the state of Washington, very typical pro-national security state Democrat, who went on CNBC today, and you'll hear her rationale. She invokes China over and over, tries to raise fear about what China is doing on this app in a way that makes no sense. Listen to what it is she said.
Congresswoman, it's hard to decide what to do. Everybody wants to allow corporations.
I think I said Democrat. I meant she's a Republican from Washington, but a very entrenched Republican in the pro-national security state. I think I said, did I say Democrat? Anyway, she's a Republican from the state of Washington.
Even if they're not U.S., we don't want to ban corporations. We don't want to ban free speech. And TikTok very effectively has reached me with their ads now. They've got this cute little nun that's doing a bunch of good works that she needs TikTok to do that. Have you seen that? She's got, there's another one. We're talking about a neurosurgeon who lost his son in a drunk driving accident, and he's been able to reach people so that trying to make it. I mean, they're very smooth and sort of, I don't know if it's conniving, but is this the CCP tugging on my heartstrings to allow TikTok to remain, so that we don't do anything about it?
Well, just because they say it doesn't make it true. And they are collecting massive amounts of data, 170 million users that are on TikTok. This is how China operates. This is how the CCP operates. And they are using.
Okay, this is how the CCP operates. They collect enormous amounts of data about their users. Now, just let's stop for a second and examine this. Obviously, this is how the U.S. government operates as well. The U.S. government collects enormous amounts of data about American citizens every single day. Not only that, this is the reason why this argument has never made any sense, that the Chinese needed to invest in a new social media app, invest billions of dollars in it, build it up over years, promote it, build it into this very popular app in order to spy on the American public with regard to how they use their computers, when we all know that not only do Facebook and Google and the other big tech American-based giants collect all that, it's also then sold on the open market. The Chinese don't need to create a social media app to lure Americans to use it to spy on them. They can go buy all of this data about our browsing history and everything else that we do online on the open market. In fact, here's NBC News and a report that we covered in July of 2023. Quote, U.S. government buys data on Americans with little oversight, report finds. The report, published by the Office of Director of National Intelligence, offers fresh insight into how U.S. intelligence agencies have capitalized on the widespread availability of for-purchase data about Americans. And we reported on this, and what the U.S. security state was doing was buying and is buying enormous amounts of invasive data about the online behavior of American citizens that they would be prohibited constitutionally from collecting on their own absent a search warrant. In other words, anybody can go and buy this data, including the Chinese. Why would they need a social media app in order to go do it? The reality is that the U.S. government wants this data. It wants to force all Americans onto the apps where it can spy and where it can control the flow of information. Here's the rest of what she said.
China operates. This is how the CCP operates, and they are using this to surveil, to target and manipulate data. We saw a real-time example yesterday when we were in the middle of this hearing and markup, where users on TikTok were blocked from being able to get onto the app until they called their representative and told them to not support this legislation. That was one real-time example of how they can manipulate Americans for their own purposes.
What TikTok did is what all companies did, which is use its platform to advocate against laws they perceive against their interests, such as a bill to ban TikTok from the U.S. And they gave people the information and said, call your member of Congress and tell them what you think about this bill to ban TikTok. And obviously most TikTok users don't want TikTok banned. That's why they choose to use it. This is what Facebook and Google do all the time. They put ads all over their sites when they want to lobby for laws, not just in the United States, but in every part of the world, or lobby against it. The only difference between TikTok on the one hand and Google and Facebook on the other is that TikTok still has a little bit of independence from the U.S. government. Not a lot, because as I said, one of the things Trump was able to do was extract a lot of concessions. We've talked about before how we had two examples of where our segments got banned by TikTok, and both had nothing to do with China. They were very much critical of the U.S. security state. One where we criticized U.S. and NATO narratives about Ukraine, and that got taken down and then reinstated. And another was about a report about the CIA efforts to interfere in the Brazilian election in 2022. And that went viral because we put it on TikTok with Portuguese subtitles, and then that got banned. Obviously, China has no interest in banning content that is critical of the U.S. security state. It's the U.S. government that has an interest in having that happen. And that's exactly what they have been doing through these threats to ban TikTok. Here in December of 2022, you see Reuters exclusive. TikTok steps up efforts to clinch U.S. security deal. They've been doing everything possible to accommodate the concerns of the U.S. security state, including agreeing to turn over more and more control of the platform over to them. Quote, TikTok has already unveiled several measures aimed at appeasing the U.S. government, including an agreement for the Oracle Corporation to store the data of the app's users in the United States, and a United States data security division to oversee data protection and content moderation decisions. So here's what TikTok already agreed to do, which is they agreed to have this United States Data Security Division, which is part of, it's a vendor that works with the U.S. government that oversees data protection and content moderation decisions, which is what TikTok has been saying to the U.S. We don't care about censoring which material is censored. We're not here to propagandize Americans. We're here to make money. We're capitalists. That's what they are. That's who runs TikTok. We went over the biography of the founder of TikTok, the CEO of TikTok, and they're perfectly happy to turn over, quote, content moderation decisions to the U.S. government, which is exactly what they've been doing increasingly. Quote, TikTok has spent $1.5 billion on hiring and organization costs to build up that unit, according to a source familiar with the matter. Now, just to underscore this case, here is TikTok's announcement of what it calls its About Project Texas. And the whole point of this, there you see TikTok's commitment to U.S. national security, is to turn over more and more control of TikTok to the U.S. national security state to control what information and opinion are allowed on TikTok as a way of staying in the United States. Quote, put simply, Project Texas is an unprecedented initiative dedicated to making every American on TikTok feel safe, with confidence that their data is secured and that the platform is free from outside influence. Our content moderation systems and processes, both machine and human, will be subject to outside review to ensure that moderation is taking place only in accordance with our published community guidelines. The USDS, the United States Data Service, will implement these rules. And the TTP, the American-based trusted technology provider, will have full visibility, guaranteeing that there are no unexpected changes to our system. All promotion decisions will be transparent and audible to the third-party monitors and our U.S. Content Advisory Council. Whatever else is true, this is a case where the United States government is intervening and saying, we will dictate how one of the most popular social media apps in the country runs, that tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of Americans voluntarily choose to use. And if we don't like the ownership of this company who's controlling it, we will force Google and Apple to block this app from their store so no one can update it any longer, and therefore it becomes unusable and no new users can download it through the store. And we will force Amazon to cease any hosting services as well. So you have the legalization of the model that was used to destroy Parler by exploiting the monopolistic power of Apple and Google to destroy whatever social media sites don't fully submit to the United States government. How is it possible to have expressed concern for years over the increasing control of the internet by the U.S. government and at the same time cheer because they've gotten you afraid enough of China and this narrative that China's coming to spy on you and propagandize your children through this app when none of it makes sense, that you're going to now cheer when the United States government does that, exactly that, in the most significant way possible. As I said, at the very least, if the government is coming for the internet, as they're doing here, before you give in to your fears, exercise skepticism about whether these arguments make sense.